welcome to the PPMA Show TV studio, sponsored by our friends over at Markham and Marge. And I am joined, fresh from stage, the wonderful sustainability director from Huel. It is Jessica Sansom, who's here to have a little chat with us about everything that she is up to. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, of course, great to be here.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Because I know at the moment you're working at Huel, but actually your work within this space, in the sustainability space, goes right back.
Oh, not too far back. Goes a fair way back. So this is all I've really ever done. I started off working for the Australian government a while ago with their Greenhouse Challenge program, and I never looked back. I spent 6 years working for McDonald's across all of their different geographies, it felt like at the time, trying to put sustainability into their supply chains. I spent a long time with Innocent Drinks, based in the UK, sort of heading up there, sort of charged to be, actually, as the founder said to me in my interview, I want you to make us the most sustainable company in the world.
Oh, small challenge.
Small challenge.
Yeah.
And now I'm working at Huel because I love the intersection of health and sustainability that the company brings.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, actually. You mentioned that connection between health and sustainability, because they are absolutely connected. And you've just been over on the seminar theatre, and this was a big part of your talk, actually, how we can't ignore the two and how they are driving together, sort of especially within the food industry, and obviously what we're looking at today here at PPMA Show as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's go back to, I guess, the beginning of this journey then. So if we're talking right from the start, the soil, how do we get from there to processing and packaging?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have to look at the food industry as a whole when it comes to what are the kind of solutions that we need to put in place. So, there's huge developments going on in farming. We've got a massive shift towards regenerative agriculture, which is all about looking after the soil and soil health, because that is the basis of agriculture. No soil, no agriculture. But then, we need to sort of carry all of that through, and a huge part of that, and something I spend a lot of time talking about, is what we're actually eating, which of course is what we're actually growing and what we're processing and so on, and how important that is in terms of meeting our global sustainability targets and also our health targets in that space. So I think what we eat is the big connector that goes all the way through the different stages of, our food system and supply chains and so on. And that's the bit that sort of it all hangs on that.
Absolutely, and arguably, the more, I guess, processed that food is, then it's the health impacts, the carbon emissions that can come alongside of it as well, can really have an impact. It all adds up, because I think we only think a lot of the time about the end result. We think about the plastic at the end, whereas there's a whole lot that goes on within this process of getting that food on your plate.
There's a lot, but it's really funny because often the finger is pointed at processing and packaging as the bad guys in this space, and that's probably the space where we've made the most advances. That's the space where we've hugely developed our technology to be able to preserve food for longer so that it doesn't go to waste, to be able to preserve nutrients in the food so that it is more nutritious for us. And that's all because of what we're doing in processing and packaging. And a lot of that innovation, which we've seen there, we actually need to put into logistics and transport and storage and agriculture and so on, and to be spreading it out. And so one of the things I was talking about today is how can we take this really great innovation that we've got, but which is very centralized, and look at decentralizing it. How can we look at localized adaptations of it? How can we look at in-field applications of it in order to prevent food waste and preserve food at different stages in our supply chain as well?
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you sort of mentioned this, and I think it's an absolute sort of hats off to the processing and packaging industry, because there are such strides, and you're seeing it on the floor here at PPMA Show. 2 years ago, the word sustainability was starting to creep in. Now you've actually got these solutions on the floor, so it's fantastic to see this. But like you said, it's only part of the problem, and moving forward we need to start looking at that bigger picture. There was a stat that you mentioned during your talk that actually the vast majority of the waste with food comes in that first mile, of production.
That's right.
So what are some of the areas then that you think we should be focusing on moving forward?
Well, one of them, as I said, is what can we do to prevent it at that first mile stage? How can we, both in more developing economies where perhaps it's simple solutions. It might be about training in the field for farmers. It might be about simply providing them with metal drums or a tub hauler, really simple solutions. And then it's all the way through, which is looking at how can we continue to sort of push these boundaries, and how can we continue to look at them through that joined up lens of sustainability and health? How can we not just say, oh my goodness, we've made huge strides forward in energy efficiency, but not look at what the energy is that we're using and what the source of it is, and maybe be looking more, at increasing our renewable energy usage or on-site energy generation and so on. So there's so many different things that we can still be doing in this space to keep pushing our progress.
Yeah, amazing. I do want to, towards the end of your talk, you were talking very much around packaging and plastic, and this probably comes as quite a surprise to some people, because when they think about sustainability, they instantly think about plastic being the worst problem and they want to move away from it completely. But actually that isn't always the answer, because we don't have the technologies or the solutions within the waste management to handle this. Now, you've got some experience from your time, was it at Innocent Smoothies? Could you talk us through that, because this is so fascinating?
Yeah, sure. Look, plastic so often is made out to be the devil, and it's incredibly frustrating because it is so good at what it does. It protects food so beautifully. It's lightweight, which means that it's not heavy to move, which means you use less fuel, which means lower carbon emissions and so on. And yet it gets vilified all the time. And we do have problems with plastic as well. It is in our environment, it's in our marine environment, it's in our land environments as well, and that is an issue which we need to address. But we need to be sensible about how we go about it. And we made some interesting choices when we were at Innocent Drinks because we got so much backlash about plastic. So we investigated compostable plastics, for example, with our bottles. And the problem was, of course, that so few people actually have composting at home. It's around 4% of households in Britain. We've still got very limited council collections of compostable material, and especially compostable plastics. So maybe they'll take food waste, but they'll say no compostable plastics. And so we put something out there which actually was worse, because there was no waste solution for it, and because if you put it in with normal plastics, it would contaminate it, and then it was no good for recycling. So it was not a sensible move. We then made a move which was all the way to 100% recycled plastic bottles, but the problem was they don't look great. So that's not great as a company if people don't want to buy your product. But also because the industry was saying, if you do it, other people are going to follow you because you're a leader in this space. That's always nice. But the problem was they said it's not responsible, because you need to have some virgin plastic material all the time in the recycling stream. If you don't, then the plastic degrades much more quickly. And actually this circular economy, which we're driving for, doesn't then drive in an efficient way. So where we ended up was a bottle which is 50% recycled plastic, and about 15% plant plastic, which is a PET made from plants. And at that we had about the right mix. We were driving a circular economy by buying recycled material. We weren't degrading the plastic in the recycling system as it was. And we were also investing in new technology, which is trying to make PET, instead of from oil and from petroleum, from plant-based sugars and starches. So we felt in the end we got there, but it was a bit of a journey.
I think people are still unaware that actually there are other solutions than the oil and sort of that side of the PET, and actually you can move into these more plant-based options. So yes, as you said, moving into that circular economy, there are these options there, but don't jump straight into it. Just explore the wider picture before you go head first.
I think we're all really guilty of going after something shiny. We're all magpies. We're like, oh my gosh, it's a gimmick. It's so shiny and wonderful. That's what we're going to do. And the reality is sometimes simpler and slightly unsexier solutions are actually the ones that we need to follow.
And of course, there are other materials as well that you're seeing coming into the market, especially within the packaging market as well. We've got the cardboards, which of course can be recycled. We've got tins and metals, which are infinitely recyclable. However, I do want to ask you about the challenge that we've got about the percentage of recycling, because that's not high either. We're talking about actually, let's get it all back into the recycling system. But if we're doing our best as, say, a consumer to do that, but only, just over 12% is getting recycled, is there anything we can do to help that from the production side?
Well, the big problem with recycling, of course, is that there's just not that much demand for the material. And also that the material itself, when it goes into the recycling stream, is often quite contaminated. There's a lot of different materials that end up in there, or perhaps it's like with the water bottles. Water bottles, they always have that slight blue tint to them. It makes the water somehow look more appetizing, but it's terrible because it means that once you've coloured a bottle or plastic in any way, it can't go back to being clear. So then the amount of uses that it can be used for is limited. So we need to act responsibly as industry in terms of, not trying to use this as a differentiator on brand or marketing, but to just use clear bottles, for example. As consumers, we need to do our best not to contaminate recycling streams where we can and to sort of actually pay attention to what it is that we're doing. And as consumers, we need to demand to companies to use recycled content in their packaging. We need to go and ask them about what percentage of your bottle is made from recycled content and be pushing them that way rather than saying to them, oh my goodness, you're terrible, you use plastic, you're the devil. It's like, well, actually, no, we see that plastic can be good, but we need to help drive that economy again, that circular economy.
Yeah, fantastic. And as we said, we're seeing it on the floor here, and actually the machinery and the technology is available, going right the way back to even the glue that holds the cardboards together.
Yeah, that's right.
It's certainly a forgotten, it's the forgotten hero of packaging, isn't it? The glues and the tapes that go alongside it.
The glues, the tapes, the inks, all of those unsexy elements, hugely important.
We've got mineral inks coming into the market now as well, which is fantastic to see. So just before I let you go, because I know you're very, very busy, just a bit about Huel then. Now, I know you've been on a journey to get B Corp certified.
Yep, that's right.
Not an easy thing to do.
No.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that process is and why it was important for you to do that?
Huel's always been a really purpose-driven company. Our mission is to get out there and to give people nutritionally complete plant-based food. That's what we want to do. We want to help make people healthier, and we want to help make the planet healthier in what we do. And so we had an enormous amount of different initiatives that we were doing as an organization already. We've been doing product carbon footprints for years. We measure our product carbon footprints to make sure they're within sort of levels aligned with limiting climate change. We've got ethical supply programs. We source all of our cocoa from Tony's Chocolonis, cocoa sourcing and so on. So we were doing all of this stuff, but we didn't sort of have it underneath one big umbrella which said, this is what we stand for. And obviously B Corp can offer you that. And it was also, to be really honest, it was a bit of a, well, how good are we? We think that we're pretty good, so how good are we going to be if we try and do a B Corp? So we went through the process of assessing the company. It's a very lengthy assessment, and you have to get above a score of 80 in order to pass. And it was interesting for us because we already had most of the initiatives in place. That wasn't an issue. But some of them we just hadn't written down and made into policy, for example. So part of our B Corp certification was me writing a lot of policies which explained what we already did. But if you don't have it written down in policy, then when new people come into the business, or maybe there's a change of management or even ownership or whatever, that can be lost. So it is really important to make sure that element is there for us too. But we did get there, and we were super excited because we got 92.5, which we felt was a great score.
That's great, yeah.
And we were able to say, yes, this is what we do. And now we've taken B Corp certification and we've put it into our annual targets. So we have financial annual targets like every company does, but we also have B Corp targets as well. And so part of hitting them is part of our company's performance assessment.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Because like you said, it's quite a lengthy process, and hitting those marks are not always as easy as it seems.
No.
Brilliant. So just before I let you go then, if there's anything, any tips, advice, things that you just think actually for the processing, the packaging industry, the automation industry, if they're looking to add key elements of sustainability into their production lines, where can they start?
Wow. One of my sort of things that I was talking about just earlier at the seminar theatre was to try and always make it the norm. We need to make sustainability the norm now and not the exception. So we need to not have, this is all of our normal operating equipment, or you can buy our sustainability enhanced sort of version over here. So I would really encourage that, basically, is to say, please, make that sustainability, that innovation that you've got, what it is that you offer as a service or as a piece of equipment, that is the norm. and not the exception.
Amazing. Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
My pleasure.
Jessica Sansom, everyone.